Where do you stand on carbs?
So this is the most controversial one.
Yeah, you've got people that fearmonger any and all carbohydrate containing foods. You've got people that fearmonger fiber, which is a form of carbohydrate, indigestible as it may be. You've got people that endorse high carb diets, low carb diets. We've already talked about the mechanism behind insulin and fat loss and how it really doesn't matter. It ultimately comes down to energy balance. But nonetheless, there is still a significant proportion of people that are afraid of carbs. So what's your take?
Well, the reason that carbs get so much controversy is because it is technically the only non-essential macronutrient. So you don't need it to live. That doesn't mean that it doesn't come with health benefits.
Right.
And particularly with the message that we've been pushing here with, lean muscle and building lean muscle is probably the direction that most people should be going. I mean, the majority of people aren't obese, which is a good thing. And so the direction that most people should be going is figuring out how to maximize lean muscle building. And carbs certainly have benefits in that. When you exercise, the specific muscles that you use have compartments that have muscle glycogen drained, and that affects fatigue and recovery. And so having carbohydrates in the diet can make it a lot easier to essentially recover from your daily exercises and likely keep up the quality of your exercises over time. And there have been studies looking at ketogenic diets and low-calorie diets, and they certainly show that you can build muscle on these diets. The problem is the farther that you take them out, the more it seems that they don't build it as well. And so they blunt the hypertrophic response. They certainly affect aerobic exercise rather quickly. They affect anaerobic exercise over time. The strength training exercise over time tends to take some hits. And that's confusing for people too, because you can look at studies that will look at strength athletes, like really well-trained strength athletes, Olympic weightlifters, powerlifters, and you can put them on a ketogenic diet and have them test their strength in 4 weeks, and they'll have just the same amount of strength. And it's not that it completely destroys your ability to use the strength that you have. It's that you don't gain as much strength over time moving forward in that eating pattern. And this happens, the strength and hits to your muscle building potential happen for a variety of reasons. One of them being it increases your reliance on essential amino acids for oxidation. I mean, you start using protein as an energy source. And that's an issue because it decreases muscle remodeling and repair because you're using more of the protein to fuel energy rather than to actually repair your body and cause beneficial adaptations, and that blunts the hypertrophic process. So a certain amount of carbs are necessary if you want to maximize your return of lean muscle building. And that's kind of what I want to push people towards, in this discussion anyways. The numbers are between 3 to 8 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight. So quick rough math, 1.5 to 4 grams per pound of body weight. This is where I get a very visceral reaction and kickback, because when people start to do the math about that, they realize I'm not going to lose body fat taking in that many carbs. And my answer is, you're right, you're not. And there's a reason that we don't see the highest levels of lean muscle building in a calorie deficit. And when we look at the research about that, I mean, calorie deficits of as little as 200 calories below maintenance daily can either blunt the response entirely or even start to cause a slight loss in lean muscle in some people, depending on genetics. And that gets more severe the deeper into a calorie deficit that we go. And so if people are just trying to cut body fat, we recommend between 200 and 500 calories below maintenance daily. And that's a good range. It's where most people can retain a good amount of lean muscle and where they'll still see a significant amount of body fat. Once you go beyond about 500 calories below maintenance, that's where you really start to see that lean muscle loss ramp up. And people will do it because they'll say, hey, I'm seeing the scale move really quickly and that's really motivating for me. Unfortunately, the scale is moving really quickly because not only are you losing body fat, you're losing a significant amount of lean muscle with it. And that's why the scale is dropping so quickly. So we want to keep people out of that.
And that also increases the larger your calorie deficit also increases the risk of the metabolic adaptation that we began the conversation with, right?
Well, metabolic adaptation, it responds mostly to the amount of weight loss. Now, yes, it will respond a little bit to the severity of the deficit, but it's probably secondarily to the fact that you're losing more weight. And so metabolic adaptation ramps up because of weight loss itself. And so as you're doing that and losing more and more weight, your body says, hold on, we need to pump the brakes here. And I'm going to make this guy really sedentary and I'm going to give him really bad cravings so we can start to, stall out this weight loss effort and maybe even add body fat back. And if you think about this historically, it actually makes a lot of sense. We have this very almost unilateral system in our bodies because our bodies still think that we're cavemen.
Right.
And so, when you were a caveman,
some of us still are.
Yeah. I mean, I got a nice brow ridge. And so when you start to think about how that worked historically, if you were losing weight when it was difficult to find food because you had to either forage or hunt, it was a bad thing. And so it wanted to make you more sedentary and move less when you're not going out to find food. And so that would be a way to stall you out from losing more body fat. The problem is these days, we have as many calories as we could ever possibly need. So it doesn't serve a purpose right now. Now, technically, in some people, there's a mechanism in the opposite direction where if you eat too much, you actually start to feel really nauseous and you don't want to eat. But it doesn't work to the same extent. It's not as good as the other system that prevents weight loss. And so we have to be conscious of the fact that that these things are happening. And if we are conscious of when and why they're going to happen, that's when we can make those moves to fix it.
And also when it comes to carbohydrates, I mean, fiber seems to be...
It's very beneficial.
It's very beneficial.
Well, not only is it very beneficial, the foods that contain fiber are very nutrient rich.
I learned this recently, that when you actually eat fiber, like when the bolus of food contains fiber, you're actually pooping out a significant proportion of calories.
You might be. I can't say how much because it's going to be dependent on the overall meal. And like we said, the full diet makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
You have to take this into the context of a full diet, and you're going to be.
But they've done like stool
probably
studies
crapping out
where they
they
look to see like what energy is recoverable from stool
Yeah.
on like high fiber diet. Like, I mean, I could be butchering this, but like from what I recall reading, so take with a grain of salt. There's like a higher amount of energy.
Gastric motility. And so there might be less time for absorption and digestion. And in some diets that may make a lot of sense and be beneficial. But, the big thing here is if we're talking about these levels of taking in proteins, fats, carbs, and we're realizing that for most people, we probably want to be at maintenance levels of calories or higher, we have a decision to make. And so we're either going to take the scenic route and stay at closer to maintenance levels of calories, or we get into more of a calorie surplus, and that's when we start to focus on the rate of gain that we talked about earlier, monitoring that monthly rate of gain. And so you do have this decision on what's most comfortable for you. And if it's more comfortable emotionally and mentally to stay closer to maintenance and say, hey, I know that it's the right move for me, but I just can't emotionally handle seeing my body fat levels rise that fast, that's okay. Don't spend your entire life in a calorie deficit. You're going to do yourself a real favor.
If you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.